Imagine a country that, I mean, historically speaking, the rest of the world had just neatly filed away into this category of, like, extremely impoverished.
Right, a place dealing with incredible density and resource scarcity.
Exactly. A nation grappling with super high population density, this constant, relentless battle against severe weather events and, really limited natural resources.
The odds just look terrible on paper.
Yeah. If you were looking at the global landscape back in, say, 1990, the odds of a population actually thriving there seemed just incredibly daunting.
Almost mathematically impossible to most standard economists, honestly.
But so I want you to imagine telling a demographer today that a person born in this exact same country right now is statistically expected to outlive the average human being on planet Earth.
They'd laugh you out of the room.
They literally would. They'd be like, how is that mathematically possible?
Yeah, it sounds like a glitch in the data, honestly. Like someone carried a one where they shouldn't have in the spreadsheet.
Right.
But it's very real, and it basically challenges almost every preconceived notion we have about what a country actually needs to, like, secure a long, healthy life for its citizens.
So we are looking at a massive 33-year data set today for this deep dive that essentially proves everything we thought we knew about money and health might just be wrong.
Completely wrong.
We're digging into an exhaustive 15-page academic report. It's titled Bangladesh: Reshaping the Resilience and Equity of Development Amidst Challenges.
And it is dense. It's an in-depth analysis based on human development data from 1990 to 2023.
Yeah, built on this huge mountain of longitudinal data from the United Nations Development Program, the UNDP.
What's really fascinating here is that 33 years, right, that's the exact amount of time it takes to watch an entire generation grow up, enter the workforce, and just completely rewire a society.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to really understand how this rewiring happened, we can't just look at the top-level headlines, right?
No, you'd miss the whole story.
Yeah.
To avoid drowning in a sea of numbers, the report uses a really specific assessment framework. It's got like 5 distinct lenses or indices.
Break those down for me.
Sure. So first, you have the classic HDI, the Human Development Index, that covers a long life, knowledge, and living standards.
It's line stuff.
Exactly. Then they slice that data using gender indices, specific the GDI and GII, to see, who's actually driving the progress and who's facing inequality.
Right.
Then there's the IHDI, which adjusts everything for inequality, basically penalizing the score if wealth and health are hoarded by a few.
Got it.
Fourth is the MPI, the Multidimensional Poverty Index, which looks at the actual physical realities of poverty beyond just income.
Like, are you actually eating, right?
Exactly.
Oh.
And finally, the PHDI, which adjusts the whole thing for planetary pressures. Basically, what is the environmental cost of this development?
I love that framework. It's like a complete stress test of a nation's progress. And I want to jump straight into that first layer, the HDI, because of that life expectancy paradox I mentioned at the top.
Oh, the life expectancy numbers are just wild.
Pure confusion when I first read it. Let's set the baseline for everyone. So back in 1990, the life expectancy at birth in Bangladesh was just 55.8 years.
Which is, it's a devastatingly low number. Because at that exact same time, the global average was 65.1 years,
So they were nearly a full decade behind the rest of the world.
operating in a massive survival deficit.
But just think about the societal impact of that for a second. An average life expectancy of 55.8 means a massive portion of your population is not seeing their grandchildren grow up.
You lose that transfer of generational knowledge.
Right. And the productive years of your workforce are severely, severely truncated.
It shapes the entire psychology of a nation when survival is that precarious.
But then, let's look at what happened over the next 3 decades. By 2023, the global average life expectancy had crept up to 73.4 years.
So humanity as a whole gained about 8 years.
Not bad. But Bangladesh didn't just creep up, they surged. In 2023, their life expectancy hit 74.7 years.
They literally overtook the global average.
By over a year. That is a staggering increase of nearly 19 years in a single generation. They went from a decade behind to actively beating the global average.
And, you see this exact same trajectory in their overall Human Development Index score, too.
Yeah, let's talk about the HDI score.
So the UN uses HDI to roll health, education, and living standards into one big number. In 1990, Bangladesh was sitting at a really low 0.397,
Wow.
while the global average was 0.608. That's a huge gap of 0.211.
So they were way behind.
Way behind. But they became this incredibly steady climber. Over those 30 years, they grew to 0.685.
Okay, so they transitioned from a low development country into a medium development one.
Exactly. And that gap with the world average, it shrank from 0.211 down to just 0.071 in 2023. The world average is at 0.756 now, but Bangladesh's growth rate was way faster.
Okay, wait, I have to push back on this a bit, or at least ask the obvious question here.
Go for it.
How does a country with just a fraction of global wealth essentially buy more time on Earth than richer nations?
It's the ultimate question, really.
Like, I keep thinking of this in terms of a sports analogy. It's like a low-budget underdog sports team that can barely afford their own training facility, yet they are consistently beating billionaire-backed franchises out on the field.
Right, like Moneyball for public health.
Yes, Moneyball. What is in their secret playbook? You don't just magically add 19 years to a population's lifespan without a massive influx of cash, do you?
Well, what's fascinating here is that the data completely decouples the idea that immense wealth is the absolute prerequisite for public health.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, this isn't a story about building cutting-edge billion-dollar hospital wings or, developing expensive pharmaceuticals.
Then what is it?
It's about a concept the report focuses on heavily: survival resilience.
Survival resilience. So, like, optimizing the absolute basics.
Exactly. Far beyond just optimizing, it's about deploying grassroots public health interventions at a scale that seems almost impossible.
Like, what kind of interventions?
Well, they proved that massive gains in human lifespan can be achieved at lower middle income levels if you aggressively target the preventable causes of death.
Ah, okay.
In the 90s, people in Bangladesh weren't typically dying of complex, age-related diseases. They were dying from waterborne illnesses, diarrhea, basic infections.
Right, things that are entirely treatable if you have the right systems in place.
Exactly. Take oral rehydration therapy, for example. It's literally just water, salt, and sugar mixed in very specific proportions.
It costs basically nothing.
Pennies. But in the 80s and 90s, diarrheal diseases were a massive killer of children there. And instead of trying to build a modern hospital in every single rural village, which they couldn't afford in the country, working with massive NGO networks, just mobilized tens of thousands of local women. They trained these community health workers to go door to door, village to village, teaching mothers exactly how to mix this life-saving solution using local ingredients.
That is just fascinating. So instead of bringing the patient to the medical infrastructure, they kind of turn the population into medical infrastructure.
Precisely. They decentralized healthcare. They focused on clean water, sinking millions of tube wells to bypass contaminated surface water.
Which stops the disease at the source.
Right. And they executed widespread, relentless immunization campaigns. It really is a story of grassroots public health just completely outperforming top-down economic wealth.
I was looking at the demographic breakdown of that 19-year lifespan leap, and it's super clear that this survival rate isn't distributed evenly.
Not at all.
Like, when you split that 74.7 years of life expectancy between men and women, the mechanics of this whole Bangladesh miracle really start to pop out.
Yeah, the data reveals what the report calls a dual lead over the global averages, but it is heavily, heavily driven by women.
Give me the numbers on that.
Okay, so globally in 2023, the average life expectancy for women is 75.9 years. In Bangladesh, women are hitting 76.4 years.
Beating the world average.
Yep. And for men globally, it's 71.0 years. Bangladeshi men are at 73.0 years.
Also beating the global average. But the internal gap there is huge.
It is. Women in Bangladesh are outliving men by about 3.4 years.
In demography, when you see female life expectancy pull away like that in a developing nation, what does that actually tell you?
It is a massive, flashing indicator of dramatic improvements in maternal health.
Because childbirth was so dangerous.
Exactly. Historically, complications from pregnancy and childbirth were the primary drivers of early mortality for women in the region. You had a lack of trained birth attendants, poor prenatal nutrition, rural isolation.
Having a child was basically a life-threatening event.
Right. So if you fix that, you instantly save a massive demographic block of young women.
And by deploying those same grassroots networks we just talked about, like training midwives and establishing local maternal clinics, they drastically reduced maternal mortality.
Right. Because when you prevent a young mother from dying in her 20s, you aren't just adding a few years to her life. You are adding 50 potential years to the statistical average.
Wow, yeah. And when you keep women alive, healthy, and in their communities, the ripple effects are just staggering. Which brings up a wild corresponding data point in this report. The absolute explosion in education.
specifically for girls.
Yes. Let's look at the expected years of schooling.
So expected years of schooling, or EYS, is a predictive metric. It looks at a child entering the school system today and calculates how many years of education they will likely receive based on current patterns.
Got it.
Back in 1990, the overall EYS for a child in Bangladesh was a bleak 5.5 years.
Basically dropping out before middle school.
Yeah, but by 2023, that overall number had jumped to 12.3 years.
Incredible. But the gender breakdown here is the real story. The
Right.
report highlights this literal gender flip.
This is my favorite part of the data.
It's so cool. If you look at the data from 1990, a little girl entering the school system was only expected to get 4.6 years of education,
Barely anything.
while boys were significantly higher at 6.4 years. But look at the trajectory leading up to 2023. Girls' expected schooling didn't just slowly catch up to the boys, it exploded to 12.4 years.
Which completely surpasses the male expectation, which currently sits at 11.9 years.
They passed them. I look at this female education data like a demographic coiled spring.
Oh, I like that.
Right. For decades, culturally and economically, young girls in this region were held back. The societal pressure was pushing them down. Boys were seen as the future breadwinners, so the limited family funds went to them.
Obviously.
But once those grassroots health systems kept girls alive and the government began actively releasing that cultural pressure, they didn't just casually catch up, they sprinted past the boys.
A coiled spring is the perfect way to visualize it. But we have to look at how they actually released that pressure. Because it wasn't just some organic cultural shift, it was heavy policy engineering.
What did the government actually do?
In the 90s, Bangladesh introduced these pioneering female secondary school stipend programs.
Stipends, like paying them.
Exactly. The government literally paid families to keep their daughters in school on the strict condition that the girls remained unmarried until they graduated.
Oh, that is brilliant. It completely flips the economic incentive.
Totally flips it.
Instead of a daughter being a financial burden that a poor family might want to marry off early, she becomes an immediate economic asset by staying in the classroom.
And it triggered this massive virtuous cycle. A young girl stays in school until she's 18 instead of dropping out at 10. Because she's in school, she delays marriage and childbirth.
Right.
Because she delays childbirth, she is physically more mature when she does have children, which leads to safer pregnancies, further lowering that maternal mortality rate.
It all connects.
And because she is educated, she is statistically far more likely to ensure her own children, especially her daughters, are vaccinated, well-nourished, and educated.
It's like compounding interest, but for human capital.
Exactly.
They're teeing up an entire generation of women who have 12-plus years of schooling. The potential energy there is immense.
It is.
But I have to play the skeptic again.
All right.
If kids entering school today are expected to get over 12 years of education, and life expectancy is beating the global average, why is Bangladesh still officially ranked 136 out of 194 countries on the Human Development Index?
It's a fair question.
Why aren't they considered a high development country yet?
Well, because development data has a memory. And that memory brings us to the shortfalls identified in the report. We have to look at the generational gaps and the massive economic anchor holding them back.
Okay, let's get into the shortfalls.
Let's stay with education, but we're going to change the metric from expected years of schooling to mean years of schooling.
So expected is about the kids entering the system today, while mean is about the adults already out there in the world.
Exactly. Mean years of schooling measures the actual historical average years of education received by the current adult population, the people aged 25 and older, who make up the actual labor force right now.
Got it.
The global average for mean years of schooling in 2023 is 8.8 years. Bangladesh lags significantly here. Their adult population averages only 6.8 years of schooling.
Wow, so that is a full 2-year deficit compared to the world.
Yes.
And I guess it makes perfect sense. Let's go back to a corporate analogy. Think of a hot new tech startup. You have their amazing future revenue projections, that's the expected years of schooling. The investors are thrilled.
The future looks bright.
But then you look at their current, slightly messy cash flow today. That's the mean years of schooling. The adults in the workforce today are the children of 1990 and 1980. They're the ones who only got those 4.6 or 5.5 years of school.
Right. It is a demographic ghost. The current labor force is heavily dominated by an older generation that simply did not benefit from the recent education boom.
They missed the window.
You have millions of workers in their 40s, 50s, and 60s who have very basic or no formal education at all. And this lack of historical education directly anchors their earning power.
Which brings us to the economic reality.
Which brings us to the most glaring gap in the report. The gross national income, or GNI, per capita.
This is where the reality check really hits hard in the data. Let's look at these numbers.
Okay, so in 2023, the global average GNI per capita was $20,327. Bangladesh's GNI per capita was only $8,498.
Oof, just 42% of the world average. Not even half.
Not even close.
And we should probably clarify for everyone, this isn't just taking their local currency, the taka, and doing a raw exchange rate into US dollars, right? This is adjusted for purchasing power parity.
Correct. Purchasing power parity, or BPP dollars, meaning we are looking at what those dollars can actually buy at a local market in Dhaka versus what they buy in New York or London.
It accounts for the local cost of living.
Exactly. Even with that adjustment, even accounting for the fact that a bag of rice or a month of rent is vastly cheaper in Bangladesh, their actual economic output per person is still less than half the global standard.
So despite the incredible gains in keeping people alive and getting kids into school, the actual income generated per person is a massive drag on their overall ranking.
You cannot leapfrog into high human development when your average citizen is earning that little.
Right.
The uneducated older workforce limits the country's transition to a high-skill, high-wage, knowledge-based economy. They are currently locked into lower-wage, labor-intensive industries because that is what the current demographic reality supports.
And that creates a fascinating and honestly somewhat tense dynamic regarding gender.
It really does.
We know the overall economic pie is still relatively small, but we also know from the expected schooling data that there is this massive wave of highly educated young women entering or about to enter this exact workforce.
Yeah.
So does all that education equal societal and economic power for women in Bangladesh today?
To answer that, the researchers used two specific lenses: the Gender Development Index and the Gender Inequality Index.
Let's start with the development one.
So the Gender Development Index, or GDI, measures gender gaps in health, education, and income. Bangladesh's GDI score in 2023 is 0.918.
And the global average?
The global average is 0.955. So there is a notable disparity. They rank 155th out of 193 countries on this.
And looking at the breakdown, the health and education ratios are actually quite strong for women, as we've just discussed.
Right. They're winning there.
So the massive drag on this index, the reason it's below the world average, is almost entirely the income gap.
The income disparity is just stark. In 2023, the estimated male gross national income per capita is $11,820. The female GNI per capita is only $5,280.
Oh my God.
Men are making roughly 2.2 times more than women.
2.2 times. So a young woman gets more years of schooling than a young man. She lives longer than him, but she enters a society where she is statistically expected to earn less than half of what he makes.
That is the core paradox of their current development phase.
It's wild.
Now, if we look at the Gender Inequality Index, or GII, which measures reproductive health empowerment in the labor market, we actually see a story of massive, albeit painful, improvement.
Okay, give me the GII stats.
In 1990, the inequality score was an abysmal 0.700, where 1.0 is total inequality. By 2023, it dropped drastically to 0.487.
Right, and that improvement is driven heavily by women entering the public sphere.
Absolutely.
Because we see female labor force participation rising sharply. The data shows it hit 43.4% in 2023, which is actually closing in on the world average of 48.5%.
And that's up massively from just 26.1% back in 2003.
Huge jump. We also see women currently holding 20.9% of parliamentary seats.
That jump in labor force participation from 26% to 43% over 20 years is fundamentally the story of Bangladesh's exploding manufacturing sector.
The garment industry.
Specifically, the ready-made garment industry. Millions of women left rural villages to work in urban factories in cities like Dhaka.
And we have to talk about the mechanics of that migration because it completely rewired the social fabric.
It's unprecedented for them.
You have young women, often from highly traditional agrarian households, moving to massive urban centers, living in dormitories, earning their own wages, and sending remittances back home. It provided this unprecedented economic independence compared to, like, their mother's generation.
It did. But the garment industry is built on low-wage labor. While these women are the backbone of the national export economy, they are often trapped at the lowest earning tiers.
Which explains why that male-to-female income ratio is still 2.2 to 1.
Exactly, they face a hard glass ceiling. Furthermore, this economic independence is constantly clashing with traditional cultural norms. And this brings us to one of the most alarming data points in the report, the adolescent birth rate.
Yeah, let's talk about the ABR. This measures births per 1,000 women ages 15 to 19, right?
Yes,
The world average is 39.1. Bangladesh's rate is 73.2.
it's nearly double the global average. Now, to be fair, it has come down from historic highs. It was 137 back in 1990.
Sure.
But 73.2 is still extremely high for a country making such rapid strides in female education.
This is where I just really struggle to reconcile the numbers. Women are staying in school longer than boys. They are entering the labor force in record numbers. Yet, they're still having children at a very young age, nearly double the global rate. How do those realities coexist?
What you are seeing is the very definition of the growing pains of development.
Like, society isn't catching up to the economy.
Exactly. A country's economy can industrialize much faster than its cultural norms can evolve. The garment industry needed massive amounts of labor, and women filled that need. But deep-seated patriarchal practices, specifically the cultural and economic pressures surrounding early marriage, take generations to dismantle.
Because even if a family is receiving a government stipend to keep their daughter in school, there is still immense pressure to secure her future through marriage.
Right.
In many rural areas, the older a bride gets, the higher the dowry a family might be expected to pay.
Precisely. And if a young woman is married at 16 and has a child at 17, her trajectory is fundamentally altered.
Everything changes.
Even if she finishes secondary school, her ability to negotiate for higher wages, to pursue university education, or to demand equal standing in her household is severely compromised.
So she is participating in the economy, but she's doing so on unequal terms.
Yes, the society relies on her labor to drive GDP, but hasn't yet removed the structural barriers that prevent her from reaping equal financial rewards.
Man, the coiled spring of education was released, but it's just slamming right into the glass ceiling of traditional gender roles.
That's exactly it.
It really proves why we can't just look at national averages. Averages are notoriously good at hiding the most vulnerable people.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, if a billionaire walks into a crowded room, the average income of that room skyrockets, but nobody in the room actually got any richer.
The math lies.
Right. To find the real ground truth of a country's development, you have to actively look for the people hiding behind the averages.
Which is exactly why the researchers applied the Inequality Adjusted Index, or IHDI.
Tell me about this one.
This index takes the standard human development score and actively discounts it based on how unevenly health, education, and income are distributed across the population.
It's like a penalty for inequality.
Exactly. It reveals the true gold standard of their progress.
I was looking at these IHDI adjustments, and it looks like almost 30% of their progress just vanishes when you account for inequality.
Yes.
That feels like a gut punch. Where is that loss coming from?
So globally, the average loss in human development due to inequality is 22.0%. When you adjust Bangladesh's score, it loses 29.6% of its progress. The inequality penalty is significantly worse than the global average. And surprisingly, the biggest driver of that loss isn't the income gap we just discussed.
It's not.
No, it is education inequality, which causes a staggering 35.3% loss compared to the world's 21.5%.
Wait, hold on. We just spent a significant amount of time celebrating that expected years of schooling skyrocketed to 12.3 years.
We did.
How can education be the massive success story and the biggest driver of massive inequality at the exact same time?
Because access is not the same thing as quality.
Ah.
Yes, basic school enrollment has expanded massively. Millions of kids are physically walking into a school building. But let's use a geographic analogy.
Okay.
Imagine the education system as a journey. For the urban elites in cities like Dhaka, they are traveling on a high-speed toll bridge. They have access to English medium private schools, private tutors, digital resources.
The premium experience.
Exactly. For the rural poor in the Delta regions, they are traveling on a flooded dirt road. They might attend overcrowded, under-resourced public schools where teacher absenteeism is incredibly high and actual learning outcomes are heavily suppressed.
So the expectation of schooling is universally high across the board, which boosts the national average.
Yes.
But the reality of what is learned and retained is deeply, deeply fractured.
Fractured is the right word.
If you are rural and poor, you might officially be in school for 8 years, but you aren't getting 8 years worth of actual human capital development.
And this leads directly into another critical lens in the report, the Multidimensional Poverty Index, or MPI.
The MPI.
The MPI is brilliant because it moves beyond just looking at a household's bank account. It explicitly measures deprivations in health, education, and standard of living.
Looking at the actual living conditions.
Exactly. Looking at the 2022 MPI data for Bangladesh, the headcount shows that 14.9% of the population remains in multidimensional poverty.
So roughly 15 out of every 100 people are severely deprived across multiple categories. What exactly are they lacking, if not just money?
The report breaks down the specific contributions to that poverty burden. The single biggest contributor is not income. It is nutrition shortfalls, which accounts for 26.1% of the poverty index.
Wow.
The second biggest is years of schooling shortfalls at 4.8%. And the third is inadequate housing at 11.7%.
Nutrition is the #1 driver of multidimensional poverty. Over a quarter of the poverty burden is just pure malnutrition.
Yes. And if we connect this back to your question about why education is so unequal, you cannot learn if you are hungry. If 26% of your multidimensional poverty is driven by malnutrition, that means a significant portion of those children sitting in those rural classrooms are undernourished. We know the biology of this.
It stunts everything.
Chronic malnutrition in early childhood leads to stunting, not just physically, but cognitively. Iron deficiency impairs brain development.
So the high contribution of malnutrition shows us a fundamental truth of human development. Basic physiological needs just have to be met before educational gains can be fully realized.
Absolutely.
Like, you can build all the schools you want and drive expected schooling up to 12 years, but a hungry child physically cannot focus on algebra.
It creates a hard ceiling on cognitive development. Despite these severe hidden inequalities, though, we cannot deny the overall macro growth.
No, the growth is undeniable.
Bangladesh is developing rapidly on a very tight budget. They're building massive infrastructure, expanding cities, and moving millions out of pure income poverty.
But in the 21st century, development usually comes with a massive looming price tag, right?
Environmental cost.
Yes. This brings us to the final and honestly, arguably most fascinating layer of the report. The Planetary Pressures Adjusted Index, the PHDI.
This flips everything on its head.
It really does. Because for the last 200 years, the model for a country to get rich and develop its citizens has been remarkably straightforward. Burn a ton of coal, pump out a ton of carbon, extract massive material resources, and use that cheap energy to build a modern economy.
That is how the West industrialized.
That is exactly how the global North got their high human development scores. But what happens to the global rankings when we actively penalize countries for the damage they do to the planet while getting rich?
It completely reshuffles the global leaderboard. The Planetary Pressure Index takes a country's standard human development score and discounts it based on their per capita carbon emissions and their material footprint.
Okay, so what happens when you apply this globally?
When you apply this globally, the world's average score drops by 10.1%. So humanity as a whole loses about a tenth of its development progress when we factor in the environmental damage we caused to get here.
Because the countries with the highest life expectancies, the most advanced hospitals, and the highest incomes are usually the ones pumping out the most carbon.
Exactly.
So how does Bangladesh fare under this planetary pressure test?
They fare astonishingly well. When Bangladesh's score is adjusted for planetary pressures, it only drops by a tiny 2.8%.
2.8% compared to the world's 10.1%. That is a massive difference. Why is their penalty so incredibly small?
Because their environmental footprint is almost negligible on a global scale. The report notes their per capita CO2 production is a mere 0.66 tons.
Wow. And the global average is what?
For comparison, the global average is 4.54 tons per capita. An average person in the world produces nearly 7 times more carbon than an average person in Bangladesh.
0.66 tons. They are barely making a dent in the global carbon budget.
Barely a blip.
And because of this incredibly low footprint, their global ranking shifts dramatically, doesn't it?
It rockets upward. In the traditional HDI rankings, which just look at health, education, and wealth, Bangladesh sits at 136 in the world. They are the bottom half.
Right.
But the moment you adjust for planetary pressures, The moment you penalize the heavy polluters, Bangladesh jumps 47 spots to rank 89th in the world.
That is
They
wild.
vastly outperform their traditional economic peers when sustainability is factored in.
I have to ask the cynical question here, though.
Let's hear it.
Is this jumping up the ranks happening because Bangladesh has invented some brilliant, futuristic, low-carbon development model that the rest of the world should urgently copy? Or is this just the natural default byproduct of a country that simply hasn't fully industrialized yet?
It's the multi-billion-dollar question.
Right. Are they low carbon by choice or low carbon by poverty?
It is the central tension of their future. The honest answer is that it's currently a mix of both, but heavily weighted toward the latter.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yes, a large part of their low footprint is because they do not yet have massive, heavy, energy-intensive industries like steel manufacturing dominating their landscape, or a fully saturated automotive culture.
Because their GNI per capita is only $8,498.
Exactly. The vast majority of people aren't flying on commercial jets and driving 2 SUVs per household.
So their lack of wealth is essentially accidentally saving them on the carbon ledger.
Largely, yes.
Okay.
However, right now, in this specific snapshot in time, Bangladesh represents a highly compelling paradigm for the global south.
How so?
They have empirically proven that incredible human survival resilience, adding 19 years of life expectancy, getting millions of girls into school for over a decade, can be built without destroying the planet in the process.
That's a huge achievement.
It is. They secure the most important human gains, life, and basic knowledge at an incredibly low environmental cost.
But the tightrope walk is just beginning, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
Because they still have that 8,498 GNI. They desperately want and need to get that number up to, say, $20,000 to pull those 15% of people out of multidimensional poverty.
They need to industrialize more.
They want to end the malnutrition. They want to pave those rural roads.
And historically, raising GNI means burning more energy. Maintaining this competitive environmental edge, this 89th in the world ranking, while they attempt to close that massive income gap and industrialize further, is their ultimate challenge.
Can they do it?
Well, can they grow their economy using green tech, renewable energy, and sustainable infrastructure? Or will they follow the traditional dirty path and see that 2.8% penalty balloon up to the global average?
It is a high-wire act with 170 million people's futures at stake.
Exactly.
Man, this has been an absolutely wild ride through the data. Let's try to pull all of this together for you, the listener.
Yeah.
We started with 15 pages of dense UN numbers, but 3 incredibly clear pillars emerge from this analysis of Bangladesh's journey from 1990 to 2023.
Right. So the first pillar is the health miracle.
The survival resilience.
Yes, Bangladesh proved that public health interventions work, even on tight budget. You do not need massive wealth to secure survival resilience. By focusing on grassroots maternal health, clean water, and basic care, they added nearly 2 decades to their life expectancy.
Officially surpassing the global average.
Exactly.
And the second pillar is the gender potential, the demographic coiled spring. The education gap hasn't just closed, it has flipped.
Girls 12.4 years, boys 11.9.
Right. Girls are expected to receive more schooling than boys. While they still face immense cultural hurdles like early marriage and a massive wage gap where men make 2.2 times more, this highly educated female workforce is teeing up a massive future labor dividend.
And the third pillar is the sustainable path. Their ultra-low environmental footprint means their development hasn't cost the Earth.
Just a 2.8% loss on the PHDI.
Right. While challenges remain in fixing the severe quality disparities in rural education and bridging that gaping gender income divide, their baseline human development was achieved with just a fraction of the carbon output of the West.
It is a blueprint, but a blueprint with warnings. And as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with one final provocative thought to mull over. Something that builds on all these sources but takes us into the immediate future.
We have spent the last hour looking at how Bangladesh has produced a generation of highly educated women who outlive men, while the country has maintained a uniquely low, almost negligible carbon footprint.
Right.
But Bangladesh is also fundamentally defined by its geography. It is a massive, low-lying river delta. It is widely considered one of the nation's most severely vulnerable to global climate change.
Facing rising sea levels, intensifying cyclones, massive flooding.
Exactly. The ultimate irony. They didn't cause the carbon problem with their 0.66 tons per capita, but they're first in line for the consequences.
Wow.
So here is the thought. What happens when this newly empowered, highly educated female workforce is tasked with saving their resilient, low-emitting nation from the catastrophic climate consequences created by the rest of the world?
That is heavy.
Can the incredible human resilience they've built internally over the last 33 years withstand the crushing environmental pressures pressing in from the outside?
It is the ultimate test of survival resilience. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We explored a lot of complex sociology and economics today, but always remember that behind every single percentage point, behind every fraction of a development score, is a human story.
Absolutely.
A story of a mother getting care, of a girl staying in school, of a rural worker moving to the city, and of a nation's incredible, improbable progress. When we started, we talked about that broken X-ray machine of
The
expectations.
math that shouldn't work.
Right. The idea that a country with so little wealth could give its citizens more time on this earth than the global average seemed impossible. But as the data shows, when you invest in keeping people alive and when you let the coiled spring of education loose, the impossible just becomes the new baseline. Keep exploring, keep questioning, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.